Today's session is the Cooking with the Seasons, and we have Chef Bob and Chef Tony, and Marlene's out there helping us film them. So, as always, feel free to put any questions into the chat box, and I'm going to pass them on. We're going to try to keep everyone muted for the whole time, and then, all right, but without further ado, we'll get started. Marlene, you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and chefs, you can take it away.
All right, so we've got a couple seasonal recipes for everyone today. Today I am going to do some fresh pasta by hand here, and there's some beautiful ramps in season right now. So I'm going to make a ramp pesto to go with some, we call it linguine. So it's something very light, very fresh, very simple to execute. And then Chef Bob is going to...
I'm going to make sticking with the Italian theme here, I'm going to make a risotto. Lots of good spring vegetables. Number one, of course, is asparagus. Some good old Hadley grass, which is waiting for 1 or 2 nice warm days, hopefully later this week, and then we'll be ready to go. If not, it's really the first of the season. I also have some local mushrooms. These are cultivated, but they're called maitake or head of the woods. But springtime is definitely mushroom season as well. I got a couple of herbs out of the garden, some garlic chives and some scallions. And another spring vegetable that a lot of people don't realize is a parsnip, because they basically overwinter them, and the farms dig them up in the spring for a spring vegetable too.
All right, so we're going to start on the dough, and kind of the rule of thumb with the dough is generally 1 cup of flour to 1 egg. Now that depends on how big your egg is, and generally it's a large egg, but if you need to add a little bit more, you can, or you add a little bit of water to really bring everything together. So I'm going to use the well method, and there's a couple for pasta. You could use the cut-in method, where you use a bench scraper and actually cut it in and then start to knead. I'm going to add a little bit kosher salt, even though we've got salted water. It's always really important to salt your flour. And crack my egg in there, my other egg. And if these are a little bit too large, then I can add a little bit of flour at the end. And all I'm going to do is just kind of start to incorporate that egg.
Did you learn this from your Italian grandmother?
Yes, my grandmother, but she wasn't Italian. Someone else's grandmother. No. So pretty simple, and really at the end, when it really does come together, it should be a very, very dry dough. Sometimes people make their dough a little bit too wet, and the reason is we're going to boil it in water, so it's going to absorb a good amount of moisture. So that's why we want to start with less in the beginning, and then also we're going to tend to knead it. So you can see how it's coming together here, and it does look fairly dry, which is good, but there's a lot of stickiness, and we want to make sure that we don't have any of that stickiness. You can use 00 flour, which is high in gluten, or a bread flour as well to assist with that gluten production. You can see how, even still, how dry it is, but we're gonna. You can also add extra egg yolk to your dough, and that just increases the protein and also gives it a particular flavor as well, but in addition, a more yellow color as well. You can see that this dough still looks fairly dry, almost there. And it really depends. The flour is the X factor on this. If you're making pasta in the wintertime, it might be a little bit drier compared to when it's a little bit humid. All right, and if you want to check out what Bob's doing, I'm just going to finish up this can bring it all together.
All right, so I got a pan on here. What we're gonna do first for our risotto, we're gonna make basically a mushroom asparagus risotto. I'm gonna basically sear these mushrooms a little bit first in this pan, and basically save them as a garnish for the risotto or stir them in at the last minute. So I got a little olive oil here that I'm gonna heat up. Get it nice and hot. And as chefs for cooking with the seasons in spring is basically the most exciting time because obviously you get the green vegetables back first. No more, you can kind of get rid of your squashes, your potatoes, and all that overwintered stuff, and start cooking with fresh ingredients again. So we're going to drop some of these right in here. Basically, these mushrooms are really good if you get them nice and crispy, so a hot pan and kind of toast them and get them kind of caramelize and roast a little bit. One of the most famous springtime mushrooms is our morels, and they actually do grow around the western Massachusetts area and a lot throughout the Northeast. They come up right about now, late April, early May. A lot of people go up forage for them. A lot of spring ingredients actually are foraged. The ranch that Chef Tony has are another one of the first spring vegetables out of the ground, and they're basically like a wild leek. Really, really flavorful, kind of garlic and onion flavor. So these are searing. We're going to season it with a pinch of salt and pepper.
Chef Bob, quick question. I know in the past you'd used like a cast iron pan or skillet, and this one seems to be a stainless steel. Is that on purpose or for any reason?
So for making risotto, you definitely don't want to use a cast iron. If I was just searing mushrooms, cast iron would be great. But I'm going to use the same pan for making risotto. So I'm going to sear the mushrooms, take them out, and start making risotto. Cast iron for risotto because you're cooking. We're going to have some white wine in there. Again, the acid from the white wine can react with cast iron. It's not the best vessel to cook with for making risotto. And so these are looking pretty good. I'm going to pull these out. Basically just save them for later. And then we'll start our risotto process. So a little more olive oil. We're going to try to keep this a tad healthier than your typical risotto. If you're making it in the fall and winter, then you're basically at the end going to load it with butter and cheese and good stuff like that. We'll try to keep it a little bit fresher for springtime. So some minced garlic and some minced onions. And we'll turn the heat down a little bit. We basically want to sweat these, basically getting them nice and tender without browning. If you brown them at all, then again your risotto will carry through that color. It'll be kind of a murky brown. Work over here. All right.
So it's all come together, and you can see how dry it is, and it should sound very heavy, like a lead weight. And from here on out, what I guess the other rule of thumb is that you want to knead this dough to really get those glutens going for about 10 minutes or so. So you could use a stand mixer, but I figured I would do everything by hand, even cutting the pasta in case you don't happen to have a stand mixer. But really traditionally, this is how they made it in Italy. They didn't have machines, and they did everything by hand and then cut the pasta with a knife. So I did the traditional way just to show you guys. All right. I'm going to knead this for about 10 minutes. So you can come back.
Just watch him knead it. Start sweating.
No, well, I'm actually on the breath.
All right,
So we just, we just got a quick comment that it's a little tough to hear. I think Chef Tony, just then you were a little easier to hear than you were, Chef Bob, before. So I don't know
Sure.
if you guys are already yelling, but if you could speak up a tiny
I'll speak up a little more.
No, I've got a
That's
big,
great.
loud Korean voice, so.
That's great. Thank you.
All right, so the onions and garlic have cooked a little bit. Now we have our rice. This is an arboreal rice, so it's a short grain. If you look at it, if you look up close, it's very kind of short and fat, whereas like a basmati or jasmine is longer and thinner. So this makes a really good kind of creamy risotto.
Kind of body shaming the risotto there, huh?
Yes,
Kind of boring.
so we'll add this in here, some arborio. And for about 30 seconds or so, we're going to kind of toast the grains a little bit in the fat that's in there, the oil. And that's basically going to help it cook kind of more individually when you add the stock, as opposed to clumping together. You're basically coating each grain with the oil. Okay, and we basically want to get the pan hot before we add any liquid to it. So what we have first to add is some white wine. And you want to, before you add anything else, any other stock or anything, you want to let that wine cook out. If you start adding your stock right now, then you're going to basically have that kind of flavor of white wine carried throughout the whole dish. So it's important to let it evaporate and reduce and cook in before you start adding the stock. The wine, again, just adds a little depth of flavor to it. You definitely don't have to use it, but it adds a little flavor.
It's really always cooked with wine. And sometimes I made it into.
Okay, so now the wine is cooked down, we're going to start adding stock. This is just a basic chicken stock. You want to keep it vegetarian by all means. Just use vegetable broth. It's important, most rice you cook with just plain water, but for risotto, you really want that extra flavor of a stock to be absorbed into the rice for the overall flavor of the dish. So what we're going to do here, now that we add stock, we're going to turn it down just to a light simmer and stir it here and there. A lot of people think you have to stir risotto constantly. You just don't want it to stick to the bottom of the pan. So as long as you're not sticking to the bottom of the pan, you can let it go for a minute or two here and there. Let that cook. Check over on these kneading capabilities.
I am pretty needy. So, but as you can see, so again, the dough's going to sound very heavy. However, it's getting smoother, and that's the formation of the gluten. So I'm going to go with this for another minute or two on this, and just going to put a little bit of olive oil. Normally, you'd want to put some plastic wrap over it and put it in your fridge for about an hour or so, just to let the gluten relax. But actually, it's not absolutely necessary. So if you are in a hurry, you can actually just let this rest for about 10 minutes. Like I'll do, then put it up and then you roll it out, let it rest again, and then cook it in our salted boiling water. But before then, it gives me a little bit of time to make some of our pesto here. So, well, this is hard work. I don't know if you've ever seen.
All right, so the risotto, you can see it's already absorbed that first bit of stock. Okay, it's far from done, so we're going to add another ladle or two. And I have on another burner here the stock that's already hot. Definitely not necessary, but it obviously speeds up the cooking process. So the stock will be hot. Okay, so that's going in. Now we're going to talk about asparagus here. So you got thin guys, you got thick guys, everything in between. Basically, the thicker the stalk, the older the root plant is. If you plant asparagus from seed, you're talking about a minimum of 5 years before you see anything like this. It's super, super pencil thin after 5 years, and then each year the same root stalks grow. You get thicker and thicker asparagus. What we're going to do here, we're going to take some of the thick ones and peel them down and save the peels to make a quick little salad too. You don't have to peel. Definitely not thinner ones are very tender enough. The thicker ones I like to peel. Some people trim their asparagus way too much. You really don't need to. Generally, the rule of thumb is if you take the bottom and you snap it, wherever it snaps is basically tender enough to eat. So I might discard that little bit there. But if you end up snapping it way up here, you're basically losing a lot of the asparagus. And then to peel, again, we're peeling for two reasons: to get the tender part of the asparagus and to get some kind of ribbons to make a salad out of. So I'm just going to do this with some of the bigger asparagus here. And asparagus, I'm sure a lot of people eat it in the springtime, but if you go to a field and you take right off the stalk and start eating it, it's like super, super, super sweet and really delicious. The longer it sits, the kind of more starchy it gets. So fresh, of course, is always best. And support your local healthy farmers.
And now I could just not know enough about asparagus, but is peeling asparagus something that people do kind of often? Because I feel as though I've eaten a lot of asparagus, but I've never peeled it.
No, you definitely don't need to. It does help with the really thick ones. Okay, if you cook that up, it's going to be kind of fibrous. So peeling the thick ones is a good idea, even gently. But again, just to make another dish here, I'm showing you guys asparagus in another way. So we're going to take some of the peels and make a little salad. But it's definitely not necessary.
I have a question about washing asparagus. Is there any need to maybe like wash it ahead of time if you're getting it from a grocery store or from a local farm? Or
everything grows out of the ground. So if you're going to wash asparagus, you should wash all the vegetables. It's kind of your own preference. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. No, I mean, it grows out of the ground and you cut it before, not inside the ground. So I don't think it's a vegetable that you necessarily have to wash. But if your preference is, of course, to wash them, then by all means, you can wash them.
And you'll probably want to wash them just before you use them because the heads are very susceptible to moisture, so it'll start to decay quickly. So kind of like strawberries, just if you do rinse them right before you use them. All right, so we've got our dough right here. I've added just a little bit of olive oil. Okay, so it's gonna just rest, and what's happening is the gluten's just relaxing. If I started work with this right now, the gluten would act like a rubber band and would pull. So every time you're kind of forming this dough, you want it to just rest. So right now we're going to let it rest for about 10 minutes. And then I'm going to roll it out. I'm going to let it rest again, and then I'll cut it into its final shape. And then from there we can make we'll boil it off. So just super, super simple. Pretty much any pesto, any greens you have, and it doesn't have to be greens. You can make a red pepper pesto. So when you do have a bounty, this particular recipe is really great because then you can freeze it. And pestos actually freeze really, really well. So, so let's get started. So very simple. I've got some garlic here. I'm just going to take the skins off. You can see the skin's got a beautiful purple. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a blender here, but you can also use a food processor as well. Top off. Okay. And I'm using walnuts. Traditionally, it's pine nuts, but walnuts would be a little bit more economical and a little bit easier to find. So you add that, and that gives it the body kind of richness. Obviously, the garlic gives it some really great flavor. I'm going to add some salt. Add olive oil. Beautiful ranch. Just gonna give it a rough chop of the blender here. One of the things about these ramps, they're really pungent. You know, it's amazing how much flavor they actually do have.
Also, it looks like the whole plant is going in there.
Correct. So, so the bottom part, or the white part, I should say, has a good amount of onion, kind of horseradishy garlic flavor, and then the leaves, just a little bit more body, and a little bit less, but really, really tasty. Okay.
These grow, like I said, they grow wild all over. They basically start in Michigan and Virginia in like early March, and then the season just kind of continues up through the East Coast. So right now in Western Massachusetts, there are people out there harvesting who are foraging for them in the wild. It's not a plant that you can cultivate and grow on the farm. It's similar to asparagus. It's a underground root system. So if you find one, you're going to find a ton of them because they're all connected to a rhizome or something. But it's definitely a chef's treasure in the spring to cook with. And you can find them usually Big Y and this time of year as well.
So I've left a couple here because I'm going to give them a quick saute and then just add it to the pasta. Start the blender, it's going to get loud a little bit, and then I'm going to add some Parmesan as it's going. What Parmesan is going to do is obviously add some richness and some saltiness and savoriness. Also, it's going to help emulsify this pesto. That's it. All right, so I'm just going to give it a taste to make sure the seasoning's there. And yeah, we're continuing with Chef Bob and his risotto.
So you can see the rice has now absorbed that second bit of stock I added. So we'll begin to add. Generally, you're looking at 3 parts, 3 additions, and the ratio varies a lot. But generally 3 parts liquid, 1 part rice or so. Okay, so we're going to add that and let that continue to cook. And risotto is one of the few rice dishes that you actually want a little bit of bite to the rice. All the other rice, jasmine rice, basmati rice, brown rice, you want it fully cooked. But risotto should have just a little bit of bite to the Okay, so we'll continue with making a quick little salad here. We peeled the asparagus. We're going to do the same thing to the parsnip here too. Basic thin ribbons with a peeler. I already pre-peeled the skin off of it. Parsnips have a really nice sweet flavor. Sometimes they get really woody and starchy down in the middle. So for the salad, I would take the outer peels, and the inside of it I would save to roast or saute or do something like that. Nice peels here, and we'll do the same with a carrot. Carrot is a good vegetable that overwinters too. Pretty much right around this time of the year, they become non-available. There is still a few farms out there that have some local carrots. Okay. So we'll have a nice colorful salad, fresh vegetables, right? We'll save that. And then for the asparagus, for the risotto, we're basically gonna go through, and you can slice it anyway, but we'll do basically right on the bias here. The tops too. If you wanted to save the tops and be fancy, you could cut these off and saute with the mushrooms as kind of a garnish on top of your risotto. And because we're cutting it smaller, it's basically going to take a minute or 2 to cook. So we'll add it in to the risotto right at the end without cooking it too much. You could also blanch them in water really quick. You know, basically boil them in water for 10 or 15 seconds just to kind of tenderize them. It's not too necessary to do that with these. Okay, so we'll save that. Do a couple more here. So we'll save those. Keep stirring our risotto every now and again. It's looking, this probably needs a little more stock. We know taste it a few times to get the done just right.
All right, so we got our dough here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it into quarters, just like that. So we got a nice firm dough here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press down this format, kind of like a little disc here. Okay, just going to add our flour. Okay, just going to use my little rolling pin here. Actually, could use a little bit more time to relax. You can see how it's kind of buckling a little bit.
Chef Tony, I know you mentioned early on adding more yolk or more flour depending on like the consistency of the dough.
Yep.
Is there a way to save it kind of at this point if you realize that it's not the right consistency?
Oh yeah, exactly. So then let's say it's a little bit too wet, then you just add a little bit more flour to it, and then just let it relax again, and then go through that process. And if it's a little bit too dry, you can sprinkle. I would probably say a little bit of fat compared to water to add that, just that little bit of moisture, and then just rework it over again. So there's always that ability to fix it with the dough. Even if it tears or rips, there's a way to fix that too. Just push it down, and if not, then just a little bit of water can fix a rip as well. So this is going to need another second to kind of relax. So if you got a little more going on,
Make Marlene walk back and forth. All right, so the risotto is going, still cooking. I'm going to add a little more stock to it. But at this point, I'm going to give it a taste too, just to see how close the rice is. Probably needs another 5 minutes or so. So I also have some chives here. These are garlic chives that I cut out of the Berkshire permaculture garden this morning. Herbs is another thing similar to the ramps that grow almost first thing after the snow melts. Your chives start popping out of the ground. So simple herb or perennial herbs like chives, thyme is a good one, oregano, sage, rosemary. All of those perennial herbs are some of the first things to kind of regrow in the springtime. So if you don't have herbs growing in your garden, chives is a very simple one to plant. So is thyme. And they overwinter and they pop up right in the spring. So we're going to mince these up a little bit, and we'll stir them into the risotto. And right at the last minute for some added flavor. And then I also picked some, I'm not going to cut these up just to show you, but these are basically onion tops. So if you're growing onions or scallions in the ground, you can feel free to snip off the top that grows out of the ground and treat them like scallions, treat them like chives, treat them like onions. But a lot of times once the onions grow over the summertime, the tops and the greens melt down and turn brown and are no longer good. So if you pick some in the springtime, they're a really good kind of free ingredient to use in your garden. A little more stock. It's coming along. You can see how nice and creamy it's getting. Okay, the creaminess comes from, first of all, the type of rice, but the constant stirring in motion basically pulls a lot of the starch out of the rice, and that starchy starch gets into the water, the liquid, and we add it and basically thickens it. So it's creating that creamy starch liquid. We got.
So while that is relaxing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to saute the ramps first. So I just have a little bit of olive oil in there. Let's add a little bit of salt. And you can see with these, I guess the first vegetables of the season, they tend to be very, very tender, and they don't take a long time to cook, like kale or one of the hardier green vegetables later on in the season. Mainly that's because of they can actually hold up to some cooler temperatures like we're having right now. And really, I mean, with ramps, just a quick saute or even grill is a great way to have them. Just really quickly on the grill, flash, and just a cinch of smoke actually in char actually really does well with the ramp, or especially asparagus. It's probably my favorite way to have asparagus. Simply salt, pepper, olive oil, and then just charred on char broiler or charcoal on side. All right. You can see it took no time here. Shut this off and put the water back on. And it's just going to take a minute or two for the pasta just to relax. I actually did get a good amount of gluten going in there, so it's just going to take another minute. And there's Bob. That risotto.
So one trick you can do for risotto, if you're cooking at home for a crowd or a dinner party or something, if you get it to basically where it's almost done, so this is probably 80% done or so, you can pour it out onto a pan and cool it down. And then when you're actually ready to cook, put it back in your pan and finish it with a little more liquid. And it's almost as good as a freshly cooked risotto. It's basically a trick that a lot of restaurants do, is they'll par cook it, cool it down, and then to order, basically heat it back up and finish the dish, as opposed to taking 30 minutes to cook the risotto. I'm going to give it a taste, see where it's at here.
Sounds hot.
It's good. So the rice is just about there. I'm going to turn it off for now. Actually, we're going to add our asparagus to it. Like this. Okay. Give it a little more stock. We'll let that cook for another minute. And for our salad, we'll put that together really quick. So, again, shaved asparagus, shaved parsnip, shaved carrots. Another really good spring green is pea greens or pea tendrils. So if you're growing peas at home, you can pick a few of them off the vines, or you can buy pea greens this time of year as well. But they actually taste exactly like a pea. We'll put those in there. We're going to give it just a little bit of fresh grated Parmesan.
Rain.
Yeah. We'll give it a pinch of salt and pepper. It's always important to season lightly your salads. A drizzle of olive oil here. And just a few drops of the balsamic vinegar.
might want to talk about where balsamic and Parmesan is from. Did I talk about that last week? Oh, I forget. So give it a quick mix, and you have a nice, really fresh, easy springtime salad. Kind of colorful and pretty. Why not just a little more on top of fresh Parmesan, like that. Any kind of nuts would be a good addition to that. You know, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds would be really good. But I would serve these two dishes together. I mean, a risotto is kind of a little bit richer, and a nice simple salad like that. You get a basically a complete meal. All right. Yeah. Joe finally relaxed a little bit. So what I've done is I just flattened out the dough just a little bit, and then I was working while Bob was cooking his pasta there. And pretty much I'm just roll it out, making sure that I'm not going over the edge. And since I like my pasta long, name it so we can wrap around the fork.
So basically, if it hasn't rested enough, when you roll it out, it's basically going to shrink right back up.
Correct.
Letting those relax enough so it can actually be rolling up.
Correct. And they are tough. It does take a little bit of practice to get that. But really, I mean, if you're making this at home, it's a perfect time to just have a glass of wine. This is relaxing. So you can see fairly even. And again, I mean, you could put this through a dough press and get one of the fancy machines and what have you. But that doesn't necessarily mean you just can't use just a standard rolling pin here. Again, you can see I'm just really rolling this out to about, let's say about 16 of an inch. And actually, the longer the better, in my opinion. So 14 inches or so. Okay, and then you just let that relax before we start to cut it, because otherwise, if we did that right now, it would buckle. And then once we put it into the pasta water, it would buckle again, and you get all these wavy noodles. Which sometimes is fine, but for me, with the linguine, I just wanted to have a really nice flat surface to it. What's that?
All right, risotto is just about done, I think. We're going to season it up here. So you can see it's absorbed a lot of liquid. It's basically tripled in volume to what we started with. The asparagus flavor really came through just from adding it in there. The rice is just done. We'll add some fresh chives. We're going to add our lovely Parmesan again. Okay. We're going to add just a nugget or two of butter. And then, which really helps with creaminess, is some goat cheese. It's also really good for a flavor component of getting that. Goat cheese is a little bit acidic, so it kind of balances out the dish. And some fresh squeezed lemon is almost essential to a good risotto. Again, when you think of balancing flavors, everything in that dish, aside from really the chives, is kind of a rich ingredient. The rice is rich, the cheeses are rich. We add a little butter in there, that's pretty rich. So balancing that out with some acidic flavor, like the lemon juice and the goat cheese, really balances the flavor and makes it more of a springtime dish, so it's not too rich. You can see as I stir it, that goat cheese melts into it. It's kind of getting nice and creamy, same with the butter. I think I just splashed a little bit with Marlene. Okay, and it's always important to continue to taste. I've already tasted maybe 5 or 6 times. That's called eating. Yeah, we're eating it. By the time you've got it just right, you're not hungry anymore. A little more salt. If you prefer a looser risotto, or if it sits right now, because it's pretty much done, right? If you're not quite ready to serve it, by all means let it sit there. When you're ready to serve it, you literally add another few tablespoons of stock to it. Okay, stir that in, and it'll come right back to life. Brings the creaminess right back to it. Taste again. One more pinch of salt. Always getting to work at today.
No.
So we'll plate this right up. Put it in here. It's risotto. Don't forget about our mushrooms that we did earlier. Garnish right on top. You could stir these right into the risotto or just serve them right on top. That's what your springtime risotto. Yummy, yummy. What are you doing over there?
I'm working.
I cooked risotto before you get more water.
You know what's really funny? I'm working hard over here, and you're making everything look easy. Salad, stirring, cutting a little bit. I mean, yeah, it's, I'm getting a full-on workout, you know. And Brandy, if you're watching, you can definitely try this as well. I'm sure you can add it to your workout routine as well. So, all right. So this is definitely not one of those easy 30-minute meal recipes by Rachel Ray, but I never saw her struggle like this. So, however, the great thing about crafting, and I think this is something Chef Bob agrees with me as well. I think most really good chefs is that when you craft something, you make something from very simple ingredients like flour, water, oil, vegetables, that we end up being very, very proud of our craft and the techniques that we're using because we understand what we're doing and why, compared to just throwing something in the microwave or the oven, things like that. And I think that's why these recipes we still make them today because they're fun. First of all, they taste great, but also we can apply our craft to it. So, having said that, okay. So I finally got my pasta. Got one sheet here, got another sheet here. Okay, and let's go with the longer one first. And again, this is one of the times you just want to let it relax again for about 10 minutes, which again is the perfect amount of time to have a beverage. And then
After water.
yeah, no, honestly, vitamin supplements. So then, however, sake of time, let's get this done. So I'm just going to roll this up, and what I'm going to do is just give a couple slices, just like this. Again, that was good. I should have my linguine. I'm just going to add a little flour so it doesn't stick. Okay. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And honestly, I think the less perfect it is, the better. Let's get this rolled up. And again.
Beautiful.
It's great, huh? All right, so then, so to finish the dish, very, very simple. It only takes a minute, minute and a half, at most 2 minutes to cook this pasta. So let's get that right into our salted boiling water here. Rid of my board. Clean as we go. Got a little saute pan here. Let's get dry.
Tyler, no questions coming in? Nobody's got questions this week? Tony's sweating over here. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
I actually do have a question. It looks like you have a strainer in the boiling pot there. Can you do it, like if you don't have a strainer that fits in the pot, you can do it separately as well?
Yeah, so most homes are gonna have a colander, and you can just pour it right into your sink and all that as well. This is just for ease for here, because obviously we don't have a sink out here, so that's why I have a strainer. But really, I mean, this is a very professional thing, but just a standard colander, or if you wanted, you could just actually use some tongs to pull it out. And then when you know it's done is when it kind of floats, and then you wait about 30 seconds.
So fresh pasta, it's total of a minute, maybe 2 minutes at the most.
Yeah, it cooks so quickly compared to dried pasta, where the moisture content is generally about 10% in that. So you really have to penetrate to that compared to a fresh pasta like this.
And is salting the water going to be different for fresh versus boxed pasta? Like the amount of salt that you're...
No, it should be about the same. And really, when you do taste it, it should taste like ocean water. That's about how much salt you're kind of looking for it. Otherwise, it won't penetrate into it. But it really has to feel like it's
It's the one opportunity to actually season the inside of that dough, because it's going to absorb that water.
And so you can see I want to make sure I'm just spraying this pasta really well here. Just a little bit of olive oil. And this is going to take no time to finish. I know Marlene looks pretty hungry there. I can tell you how it is off camera. So I'm just going to add our beautiful pesto here. And do you have that cheese by chance?
Yeah, I got cheese.
All right.
So if you buy a good block of Parmesan, it'll last for months or two in your fridge. You keep it wrapped properly. But it's so much better than how cheap American Parmesans. So it's one of the few ingredients that you definitely want to spend a little bit more money on, and use it sparingly. Use it to finish dishes and things like that. Highlight the ingredients.
I mean, there's a lot of filler that comes in with those craft Parmesans or things like that. So that's why we don't know. Really, it's just not a good product at all. And I mean, all your products should be great, but there are a couple that are just really bad. Parmesan is from Reggiano is one of them. Just gonna add a little bit of lemon juice to cut through some of that acid. All right, and let's make it rain some Parmesan.
Go higher. Go higher.
And rinse back here. That's pretty much it. And let's get this onto a plate so you guys can see. You can see those great long. Just gonna twist it. It's my first day with tongs. Swipe the rim of the plate. More cheese. There we go. That's our fresh pasta with ramp pesto.
You guys can come on and taste. Oh wait, no. We'll taste this.
And then let us know how it is. It looks great. I'll give people like another minute or so to if they have any final questions. And I actually had a question for you, Chef Bob. And sorry if you did address it earlier. But the risotto isn't something that you can cook like put all of the stock in at once. You really should like add it as you go, as it absorbs.
Yeah, a good risotto, you should add it as it absorbs. So more or less in 3 parts. If you add it all at once, you run the risk of adding too much liquid to start, and you end up with basically overcooked risotto by the time it absorbs all of the liquid. So add it in parts ensures that you're going to get the right consistency at the end.
Great. We're getting comments that it looks so good, but there aren't any other questions coming in at the moment. So chefs, if you have nothing else to add, we can probably wrap up a little early here. And if anyone has any questions, they can feel free to email me or Kathy, and we can pass on questions. And again, we're going to try to get the resources out to everybody as soon as possible. But other than that, I think we can wrap it up.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you, chefs.
Thank you.